Hey, this is Austin Saylor, and what you're about to watch is a sneak peek at part of a lesson from the lettering animation course on looping. I'm going to show you two different animations. One is a simple lazy loop, and the other one is a little bit more advanced. Let's dive right in. When I call it a lazy simple loop, what I mean is this right here. This E finishes animating in, and it drops out of the screen. It's not the most exciting transition, but I will say that if you are making an animation for something like Instagram or Dribble or a social media campaign where it's going to loop, definitely give it at least a lazy loop. It's much better than just doing something like this. Let's tweak this animation just a little bit, finish it right here. All right, so the animation comes in, and then it cuts away and just animates back. That's not as good. Hard cut when you're doing smooth animations just jars the viewer, and it takes them out of the scene. It takes them out of the feeling that you're generating with this animation. So if you're wondering how this is done, it's very simple. I'm going to start back here with the main animation. And let's see, for the sake of argument, let me show you what it looks like with the background in here. I've got the background at the bottom. All right, so scrubbing through here, this is the normal animation, nothing dropping out or anything. And that's what I don't want. But the way to get to this easy lazy loop is to take the main animation loop that you have, duplicate the file, Command D. Now come into that new composition, select everything except for the background and delete it. Make sure you're doing that on this new composition, and then open up the main composition and hide away that background layer. We don't want the background layer inside of the main composition. I'll show you why later. Now in this new composition, drag and drop your main animation composition in there, so that when your background is hidden, you see this transparent nature to the background from the main comp. And then when you're done with the animation out here in the timeline, let it sit there for just a moment. And now we're going to use the position keyframe. Set one there, move ahead half a second or so. And now just click and hold shift. When you're dragging it, hit shift so it pulls straight down. Pull it off the screen and it drops off the screen. The whole animation just drops right off the screen. And the reason I do this with a composition is sometimes you have a composition that's got a lot going on and you don't want to have to move all of those things all the way down. It's just easier to move a full composition, like so. Now this doesn't have any easing, so let's select the keys, hit F9, and go into the graph editor. Now when you're dropping something off the screen like right down, let's try to imitate gravity. And the way we're going to imitate gravity is we're going to start this easing really softly. The first millisecond of something dropping from a still state, it's not moving very fast. So we want it to start slowly, and at the end we want it to go quickly. So we're going to drag this handle so it gets steeper at the end right here. Slow and then fast right off the end. Like that. Cool. Let's get out of the graph editor, zoom back out, and now when we play through from here, see it drops out and then starts over. So you can either decide to get the thing looping back right as soon as the thing drops off the screen. We'll watch this through once. Anybody know any jokes while we're waiting? No? Okay. All right, so that's pretty simple. Now if we want to add just a tiny bit of intrigue and make it feel less like a lazy loop, we can do one new trick. We're going to duplicate that main composition and drag that all the way to the end. And this is why you want to get rid of the background inside of your main composition. I'll demonstrate why. So if you have the main animation composition and it has the background on, and you bring this new composition or the animation composition over itself, it's going to block everything behind it. See how that background messes everything up? Now if we go back, turn off the background layer, it doesn't have that. It has a transparent background to it. All right, so that's why you're going to want to hide the background layer and transfer it to the new composition. All right, now what I'm doing here is overlapping a little bit of the beginning and the end. You might not want it to like literally overlap, so I'll drag this out to frame so that it doesn't pop up, but it's, you know, it's in the frame at the same time. But now if we play through, we have another problem. It starts over, so we have to find this frame of the animation inside of this composition. That's pretty easy. We'll go to the starting point of this one, and with command right arrow, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, go back 1, 8. That's the point at which it needs to start looping over again. So we'll go back here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now that's the frame that ends right here. So we're going to go one frame ahead. Now hit B, and I'm going to show you a new trick here. Shift 1, we'll put a marker called 1 there. And if you hit Shift, it will snap to these points. So hold Shift, snaps to that point. Now we hit Shift 2, or I actually prefer to do Shift 9. I have 1 at the beginning and 9 at the end. So when you have these markers set up, it's easy to go back and forth, and it's nice to be able to check things. In this case, it's not super duper important, but it's a nice feature to know. So from here, we're going to check, make sure this thing works. Looks like it's looping correctly. Yep. And then you just export from here, and there's your lazy loop. But it's a, you know, one step ahead of a lazy loop. It's nice. Now I want to show you what I did. I took about 30, 45 minutes to make this loop a little extra special, putting a little bit of extra time. And yes, I did publish this with the lazy loop, but I decided to come in for this demonstration and show you what you could do if you put a little extra time. This is me speaking to my previous self. I could have put a little extra time and made this extra special, but at least I get to use it as a teaching point. So since all these pieces of the E are separate, I decided that maybe that top part, when it drops below the screen, it actually gets snagged right there and bounces up and, you know, basically takes the place of that initial E coming in like that. It's not exactly the same animation, but sometimes you have to sacrifice part of an animation that you like to make the whole piece better. And that's what I did here. Oh, and here's a good example of when it's nice to have a marker set up. So I can hit space, play through this animation, and I can kind of skip all of this by hitting 3 again and go back and watch it again. I really like that. Anyways, so sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra work. And if you're wondering how I did this flip without it looking like it's completely 2D, I will show you right here. So I used the same kind of trickery where I have a null attached to this E part. This E part is connected to this null, and this null has rotation properties and position keyframes. But inside of itself, I made the scale change on the or the y-axis so that it scales 200% the other way. So it flips completely around to be the same shape as this guy. But when I did that, here, I'll delete these real quick so you can see what happens. When I did that, it starts flipping around and it looks like it's just a piece of paper, and I don't want this. This E is supposed to feel solid. Like this thing, the shapes bounce and stuff like they're really solid material. Wood, I think, was what I had in my head when I animated it originally. So in order to get rid of that really flimsy 2D looking, like paper looking shape, I went in to the path for the E, and here you can see how it changes. It's actually a little hard to see how it changes, but basically what I'm doing here is I'm coming in, creating a new keyframe, and I was grabbing these guys right here. They were normally right here, making it really thin, and I just dragged them out. So real exaggerated, it would look absolutely insane, but you know, a little bit more moderate. It just looks like it's a big block moving through space, twisting even. And it's really interesting what your mind does. It's not the perfect 3D shape, and there's no shading to indicate that it's 3D, but your mind goes, huh, it's satisfied with this kind of thing. We'll watch this all the way through again. That's basically all I want to talk about in this little snippet, this little sneak peek of the lettering animation course. There's more to talk about with looping. So in the course, you're going to get a little bit more in-depth stuff, different styles of looping, but hopefully this helps scratch an itch if you were wondering how in the world to get some loops going and looking really smooth. I get a lot of questions about that. There you have it. Have a good one, and I hope to see you inside the lettering animation course soon.